Hey guys, it's Ryan Holman, founder of Sales Recruiting University. Really excited for you to be here. Today we're going to talk about a leadership tool that can help you better lead and manage and retain reps and get more production out of them. I think you're going to love this. This is something we help out our recruiting clients with. If you're not familiar with Sales Recruiting University, we're a company that recruits over 1,000 commission-based sales reps per month, and we specialize in high-volume commission-based sales recruiting for companies regardless if they want to build sales teams of 2, 20, 200, whatever the number is. But we also reduce the workload and 80% of the work on the onboarding training side as well as they scale their team. And so we're going to talk about a tool that's really beneficial to the onboarding and the retention side of scaling your team. And it can be maybe easier than what you're doing today. Now, for some context, when you onboard a commission-based sales rep, it's important, especially in a commission-based sales environment, to get an understanding of what their goals are, obviously. Now, in a commission-based sales environment, one of the biggest goals and one of the biggest reasons that they're moving forward with you is for income reasons, right? I don't know what your income opportunity is. Maybe, reps should be making on average 50, 100, 200K. I'm not sure what that is for you, but in the recruiting process, obviously income is a big piece of it. And they're entering into a performance-based opportunity so that they can have a high income, whatever high income is relevant to your opportunity. Now, when you bring reps on board, it's important to give them paths and give them an understanding, in short, of what they need to accomplish, right? The time investment, the activity, the production that they need to accomplish to hit whatever it is that their income goals are. Now, what's challenging when you're scaling a commission-based sales team is there's attrition. And what I mean by that is maybe for you, you need to recruit 3, 4, 5 reps to get one to stick, maybe as best as 50% retention, which would be recruiting 2 to get one to stick. But if you recruit 4 reps and you bring on those reps and you have these in-depth conversations around what their goals are and you try to reverse engineer the time investment of the activities, the production that's required for them to accomplish their income goals, that's amazing for their experience and from a leadership perspective if you're doing that. But what's challenging about it is it can be fairly nuanced. It ends up being custom. It's a fairly big time investment into new reps. And the reality is that there's going to be attrition. So you're going to spend all this custom management time with reps figuring out that exact information for the end result of some of them falling off. And so what we have found is it's easier from a leadership perspective and also a new hire perspective to have some cookie cutter paths laid out. And so what I typically look at is what's the minimums, the minimum expectations, right? So we'll draw that up here. Minimum expectations. What does the top 20% of reps do? What do the top 10% of reps do? And what do the top 1% of reps do? Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be like this, but the minimum is like, if you're not doing at least this within our organization, you can't work here, right? This is kind of that bare minimum, worst case income benchmark that you're communicating in the recruiting process before bringing on reps, although most likely their income goals are going to be higher than it. 20%, the top 20%, that's actually not too big of a deal. We all know the 20-80 rule, the 80-20 rule, where 20% of the sales force is bringing in 80% of the revenue, right? That 20-80 rule applies to a million different things. It's kind of interesting. But the reality is in a commission-based environment, most people, I would say kind of all people, should be able to get into at least the top 20%, right? I would almost kind of consider that average. All you need to do is have some work ethic. You don't need to be this insanely skilled sales representative to be in the top 20% of the sales team or the industry, okay? So that's not too big of a deal. So the top 20%, that's still in the top percentile of an organization, but it's realistic for everybody to get to. So I like that as the next step. Top 10%, you're looking at a bigger work ethic, you're looking at higher skill, obviously, and you're starting to get into reps that are really solid, that have that skill set. And the top 1% are just those outliers, right? The best of the best in the industry and the organization. And so instead of bringing on a sales rep, in short, and having custom conversations around what is it that you exactly want to make and trying to reverse engineer the time investment, the activities, and the production that they need to hit to accomplish those income goals, we like to help our clients at least come up with some cookie cutter paths so they can just go, hey, these are the paths. What aligns with your goals? Pick one, and I'm going to lead you and hold you accountable around those things. As an example, let's pretend that your minimum income opportunity, and again, your numbers won't perfectly align with this, but hypothetically, let's assume that your minimum income opportunity is $50,000 per year. Well, we would think about, okay, what's like the top 20%, right? And again, these don't perfectly align with your opportunity, but for the sake of illustration and to make the numbers simple, let's pretend that the top 20% was 100K in income, and the top 10% was 150K in income, and the top 1% was 200K in income. Well, that's a good start, right? So I kind of want to get an understanding of the minimum, the top 20%, the top 10%, and the top 1%, and conservatively put those on the map in terms of annual income. Then from there, what I do is I want to understand like the time investment ideally, and these things are not going to be perfect, especially like the time investment piece, but it's good to like frame this for the reps so they have an understanding of what they're committing to in terms of their income goals. But I'd like to get an understanding of the time investment and the activities required. Whatever the right activities within your sales department, the activities required to accomplish whatever the production goals are that will give them the income. So as an example, it could be like, 50K in income, you got to work, 30 hours per week minimum. Okay. And maybe the things that you want to track in terms of activities is appointments set, appointments pitched, and close ratio. I don't know what's best for you, but just to try to, for the sake of illustration, well, you would go, okay, here's the minimum income range. It's 50K. You got to work at least 30 hours to accomplish that. And you got to do X, Y, and Z daily, weekly, and monthly from an appointment setting perspective, from a pitch perspective, and a close rate perspective to make 50K over a 12-month period, which is 1K per week. Okay. So you'd have the activities and the time investment associated with making that income. And you would continue to do that for these different ranges. So maybe, for the top 20%, it's 40 hours. And for the top 10%, it's 50 hours. And for the top 1% who are making a ton of money, maybe it's 60 hours. At least at the beginning of them ramping up their pipeline, the better that they can get, they can still be in the top 10 to 1% and work lesser hours because of their skill set, but you kind of get the idea. Now, in the minimum top 20%, top 10%, top 1%, they would have different time investments associated with them weekly in terms of the hours worked weekly, and then different activities and production requirements weekly and monthly to ensure that over a monthly and or annual period, they would accomplish these goals, right? And so as an example, 150K per year, that's about $12,500 a month. And so you need to understand the time investment, the activities, the production required to make $12,500 a month so that in this hypothetical example of the top 10%, you can say, hey, you got to work 50 hours and do X, Y, and Z. And if you do that, you're going to land at this benchmark that you desire. And what's nice about this, once it's set up from an onboarding perspective or from a leadership perspective, you can go, here's the 4 paths, pick one, and that's what we're going to accomplish together. And I'm your rep. I go, okay, I want to be here. And you go, okay, Ryan, here's the exact schedule, the activities, and the production that needs to happen for you to get here. I'm going to lead you and support you through this. There's no reason you're not going to do it. All you need to do is follow the time and do the activities, and the income will happen. Okay, so that's kind of the idea. And so you onboard a rep, they have a cookie cutter path or 4 paths to choose from. And that really helps you from a leadership and management perspective because it's not all custom. Now, the custom piece may not be too big of a deal right now if you're not doing anything relevant to this, but if you've been creating custom plans of income for reps as they come on board, it's nuanced and you got so many things on your plate from a leadership perspective, and you can see how this is a lot easier, okay? So it's easier for you, it's easier for the rep to choose from, and it's scalable and you're not wasting a lot of leadership time. Now, the cherry on top of this process from a leadership perspective would actually be kind of tracking your reps as they perform. So as an example, if I wanted to track, sets, pitches, and close ratio or closes, then ideally I know what each rep is actually producing in sets, pitches, and closes, so I can get an understanding if they're on track for their goals. So when I connect with them one-on-one, or if I'm just kind of reviewing what people are doing from a leadership perspective, I know where they're tracking. If I'm your rep and I want to make 150K, but my time investment and my performance is not aligning with that, but in my mind, I want to make 150K, and all of a sudden my performance drops, and my time investment and my activities drop, well, you need to point that out and point me back to my goals and get me back on track for the activities and help me remember that, hey, you don't get what you want unless you do the work that we laid out for you at the beginning. And so it's good to report these things from a leadership perspective. So as an example, in the bare minimum income range, if I needed to do hypothetically, 10 sets a week and 5 pitches a week and 1 close a week, and if I did that, I made the bare minimum income from the other screen of 50K, Well, you would actually outline all of those benchmarks for the 4 different paths and know, assuming you are tracking what your reps are doing, if they're on track weekly and monthly for what they want to accomplish. So the point is to bring this really full circle and to get the ultimate value out of it, you actually need to track what reps are doing and actually have conversations around these things if they're not aligning with their goals. So I hope this provided some value for you today. If so, drop a comment, subscribe, like, do all those things. If you want to learn more about how we can help you scale up your commission-based sales team, please go to salesrecruitinguniversity.com, look at all the case studies, and we'll look forward to jumping on a call with you then. Thank you.